last week I had to do something at the Havel Center, give an award to a musician. And so this idea of music and politics, we were just thinking about that a lot. I got to go to the White House with my husband Lou Reed when Havel had asked him to come and play at the White House, the Clinton White House, which was a weird experience because a number of the songs didn't pass their idea of what music was, you know. But Havel did say something that was I will always remember. He was saying, and Bill Clinton is there, and Madeleine Albright, and all the diplomats and people who are doing international relations. And Havel said, the Velvet Revolution, we named it that because of the Velvet Underground. And Madeleine Albright is, what? You know, it's like, and he said, music can change the world. It can revolutionize the world. And so I think I always try to think of that in situations like that we're in now. What does it mean to make music? And so thanks for coming. We're going to talk a little bit later, right? Maybe, Jason, you should say a few things.
Just a couple things is we're going to do this listening party and then a Q&A, and then we're going to go over and have sweets over at the local. And then we're going to watch Lucy's amazing film at 3:30 downstairs, just so you know what's happening. And just a note, I got to listen to the album in here. And this is an Atmos room, which means it's lots of channels instead of listening to it in stereo on your headphones. And do you want to just say a word about the immersive quality of it, or?
I haven't heard it in this room, so I'm hoping it sounds okay. We mixed this record at Miraval, which is a really beautiful studio in Provence, and it was a studio where a lot of hit records were made in the 60s. So all of the big, giant mega bands went there to work with this really great equipment. So going into the studio, and then it was bought in 2008 by Brad Pitt. And he bought 1,000 acres of this beautiful land, and with a Roman amphitheater. And he's also a really good designer, so he designed a lot of Japanese gardens. He took the studio from the 60s and turned it into a 21st century studio. It was really, it's an amazing place. So you can, being at the console of in the studio was like being in a giant airline, just a giant jumbo plane. And it was actually about this wide. And so when we were mixing this, we really did feel like we were about to take off, somewhere, so. The Atmos mixes are like similar to 5.1, but they have different sweet spots. So I didn't get a chance to hear this before, but I'm going to go and sit somewhere in the middle and see how it sounds. It sounds different in many different ways if you listen to on headphones. Or I also have do any of you have that little upright record player? It's a vertical record player. It's so fantastic. You can get it for like $100 at the MoMA store. And by the way, if you need a Christmas idea, and it plays vertically. It's not, so you put the needle down and it's going like this. And it just sounds like a really little ensemble is playing with unamplified in the corner of your house. And it's a very, very beautiful way to listen to music. This is in a way the opposite. Is we mixed this in as cinematic a way as we could. So, but each system is tuned and trimmed differently. So we'll see how it sounds. Yeah, fingers crossed. But
so
thank you so much for this
afterwards.
opportunity.
Oh, what a blessing
and
to
then
have you
we're
here.
going to be talking about the relations of our fellow presenters, and also get out the vote, people. So. I kind of felt like it was sitting on the plane with you. Jumbo wings on either side of this place.
It was so beautiful. I was kind of, my eyes were closed and I was kind of feeling blissed out, and then I'd open my eyes and Everyone else's eyes were closed and they were blissed out.
Yeah, I think closing your eyes is a nice way to hear this particular one, because I think everybody's own pictures are so much better than looking at somebody else's version of something like this. Just because she was really spent a lot of time describing what she saw, because she was flying at a fairly low altitude, and she saw a lot of things really pretty clearly, down to the clothes on the line. So I wanted to keep it as kind of visual as possible. So put a lot of things in that were around other objects, so to connect them.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the writing process? Because there's some lines from her journals, and then there's your own concepts that seem like drawn maybe from her subconscious or her soul, and then there's her voices in it. And
biography is so difficult. I mean, this wasn't an attempt to do that, but because I really did, I read a lot of her pilot's logs and her diary. She was a very, very, very conscious of what she was doing and wanting to communicate it. Another way to put it is she married her press agent, and it was not a love match. It was like kind of a handshake. I'm going around the world, so I want you to help me, and you did. And it was, Putnam did help her a lot, but she was the original blogger. She would write at every stop, talk to reporters, file things with various papers. She was extremely conscious of what she was doing and what meaning it had, particularly for women. So her audience was really women. She was always talking to women, saying, you're in your kitchen, like I'm in the cockpit, and you're like, not really. You're not at 10,000 feet, She's making toast. But she was very. The thing I really loved the most about her, in reading about her, was that she said, if I survive this, and she wasn't that sure she would make it.
50-50.
Yeah, but towards the end it was 50. At the beginning it was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. But at the end she was exhausted, and you can see through her logs how kind of disconnected she's getting, how tired she is, really. She was just really tired, and that sound constantly. And at the end she kind of crumbled, but along the way she kept reviving herself, and she said that if I survive this, I'm going to start Shop for Girls. And I was like, whoa, so Shop at that time was, for boys, and you would do metalworking and woodworking and tinker around with engines, and girls took home economics, which is cooking and cleaning. Getting ready for your life. And so she said, girls want to know how engines work too. So they're just like, they just need the right clothes. They don't have the right grease monkey stuff. They're told not to get dirty. So we get them the right clothes, get them under the engine, see how it works. And I thought, that is so revolutionary. And 87 years later, how many women really are in those fields of engineering and electronics, and it's a little bit better, but shockingly not very many. And so I really thought she was amazing for pushing that, and for mentioning that was just not in anybody's consciousness at that time.
There were some lines that sounded like they could have been your lines too. There was a line about all I knew is I wanted to fly.
Well, she didn't write something as a kid, and so I was just wondering what it was like to be a kid in Los Angeles, looking at these guys doing loop-de-loops, and I always had as a kid I always wanted to do that too. So I could kind of relate to it. So I thought, what might it be like for her to think of it that way? So I didn't ever directly quote her, so I used little phrases, and I did use her timestamps. All of those things are where she was, and a little bit about how she saw things, but not directly taking things. So it was a kind of combination of just fact stuff and then imagining what she might have thought. How tough that was. It was, it just must have been just the sound alone. If you just try that for 20 minutes, in a closed cockpit, and then try it for 42 days. Plus her navigator, as she said in her logs, it was personal unfitness. He was totally dead drunk for the last third of the flight. And he was gone. He was no help whatsoever. He was like, what? She looked back and he was like, so she was really on her own. And
the music is so lovely. And and I know you have the privilege of playing with all these beautiful musicians. Well, can you talk a little bit about what it was like to work with them?
Here's one right here. Martha, Mooke, stand up. Can we convince you for a second to come up for a second and say a thing or two? Because Martha, I think of as the shredder on this. This record is all about violas, 5-string instruments. That here's Martha. So Martha and I have played together. Yeah, just have a seat for a second.
Right, sure,
and we've played in a bunch of different things, and we did a Carlisle gig.
We played at the Cafe Carlisle together. And Carnegie Hall. I mean, not too bad.
Yeah. Can you talk about a little bit about some of the way you work and how you approached playing on this record too?
Well, really, the whole experience is really like being in the cockpit, even when we were in the studio, and just trying to become part of the story, part of the landscape, and the texture. And I mean, there's so much in there. It wasn't all in there when I had the headphones on, but it's so amazing how it all came together.
You have the most dangerous lines where anytime you hear a viola going, that's the shredder.
Stick around, you'll hear it live later.
Yes, she's going to be playing later as well, which is fantastic. Any last thing you want to say about that? Because I mean, also how it relates to your music too, because you'll hear Martha play.
Well, there's so much going on in the album, from the orchestra, and there's a string trio, and then there's amazing. I was hearing the bass popping. Yeah. It's just so incredible. And there's electric guitar, and there's ukulele, and it's all in there. And it's, how does that all go together? This is, that's what's so magical about it in this story. And then listening to the story of Amelia and just being in there, I get goosebumps every time I hear it. And I'm so proud to be part of this. Thank you.
Come back and hear Martha later. She's going to be playing. She's dangerous.
Do you have questions out there in the audience? Yes.
I'm really glad you pointed that out, because the Sandstorm section is my favorite section, because we're trying to make these something swirling out of vocals and this kind of grit motor stuff that I made for this piece of the motor. Her motor is made out of about 18 sounds, some of which are Lou Reed's guitars. He's got a down there at the bottom of them. They're part, and sort of some of those overtones are in there, with a lot of other types of machinery. The Sandstorm is made of vocals and different types of reverb, and I really love trying to represent the hallucinatory part of her, what might have been going on for her as she flies through banks of clouds, first of all, that look like impassable mountains, and you just go flying right through them. I mean, just starting right there. She's in this phantasmagoric world, half real, half not, and at quite high speeds for what for her day. And so make something that had this kind of energy and swirl that she must have felt. I think just from the moment the propellers start doing that to going up into these big turrets of clouds and feeling that kind of energy. So why do you do that? You know, it was really why I wanted to make this, is to, what is her story? Why would she do that? So that was, a number of the energy elements were ways to answer that, because why do it just go into one of the middle, towards the end, I named one of the sections called Fly Into the Sun, after one of my favorite songs by Lou Reed. And we often talked about why you would do something like that. Why would you do something? Why do you do anything? So I start with that. But why would you do something like that? And the answer really is to go towards the brightest light you can find, and just see what would happen. Just, you know. So that was. I felt something of her motivation. I mean, and it's not in an Icarus sense of like just self-immolation, but just for adventure. See what's there. I spent a lot of my childhood telling plane stories about airplanes to my sister, one of my many sisters, and who was insomniac. And so I had a series of stories called the Judy Marie series. It was one of the early like Netflix kind of series. It was a streaming series every night in our bedroom. 70 years ago. And these stories were about a girl named Judy Marie, who was, standing in for my little sister. Judy Marie had a plane. She parked it in the garage, and she would pull it out every morning, and she would take off and go all around. She went up to Canada. She went all over these places. And then she would come back and land the plane in the garage, and it was a wonderful way to basically put her to sleep, really, because otherwise she would just be like talking all night. So I like these sort of long shaggy dog story things that but also adventure stories have always appealed to me. Like what could you do to have an adventure?
Great. Another question. Yes, ma'am. Here comes the mic.
You and airplanes, they're American planes made in America. What is this relationship with airplanes?
Thank you, Joan. Okay, planes, captains, particularly ships that are going down. Moby Dick. There's a song in the United States, or two, I guess, about this year, Captain, we are going down together. I'm just finishing, or trying to finish, a work that's probably about 4 hours long. It's called ARC, United States 5. It's a portrait of this country at the moment. And ships going down, and I don't know, it has kind of like appealed to me of trying to build something big, and then what happens, to it. So, and all sorts of things happen, of course, in Moby Dick and in other kinds of. So this is ARC, about building a vessel for the future, and it doesn't exactly go down, but I can't tell you the ending. You'll have to see this. I haven't written the ending, really, but neither have we, actually.
Oh, well, first, it was a really wonderful piece, so thank you. My question is, do you know this novel? It was written about 25 years ago, I think, called I Am Amelia Earhart. It was written in the first person. I was wondering if that was an inspiration at all, because I made me want to go back and read the book again.
I would like to read that too. I started reading it, and then I thought, it has such a point of view. I'm going to try to go back to her diaries and logs and find my way in, not through another voice, but try to get to the source there. But I would love to read about her, and a number of other female pilots too that also were writers. So it's kind of a tradition.
Hi. Oh, it's loud. I just, with just sitting here listening and getting to hear it in this incredible sound space was, I mean, it was totally different than hearing it, which I had heard it before, just on my, whatever, Sonos speaker or whatever. Anyway, it was quite emotional. I found it so emotional. And my question for you is, as an artist, do you ever get swept away with sort of the emotion of anything that you're working on? And how do you stay focused? Because I also am a writer and singer, and sometimes I get sort of swept away, almost, and then it's like, no, stay focused, finish the work. And so I'm wondering, do you also have that issue, or
do you cry when you're writing sometimes?
Oh yeah,
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Okay.
I think when you're trying to find something and it touches you, it's a really good thing to not just go, okay, that's the thing, but to feel it.
Oh yeah.
To feel it for yourself and to cry. So I cry a lot. Her story is really an intense one, and and I think also it's interesting to find things like that where you're not really sure quite why you're having that emotion. I trust that as well. They're kind of like, why am I feeling like that? You're feeling like that. You don't have to say exactly why and how. So I've learned to really trust that much more than I used to. I used to want to analyze why that is and why is this important and how does it fit into that puzzle. No, just because it makes you feel something. That's enough.
It's funny because I'm a therapist too, so I have this analytical part. And so I think I kind of do that. Sometimes it's hard to do both. So that's what I meant by the focus, like, okay, stay focused, and I've always admired that about your work, is that like it takes you somewhere, but it's also, you're so focused.
Well, you get to work in different ways. I mean, I know a lot of you here are writers. I know some of you, and that's part of the process too. Is how does that feel, and then how am I going to make that work in a structure? Yeah. So it's both, yeah. and I really really appreciate going back and forth between those things, and I just love puzzles. How is that going to fit with that and talk to that and do that and echo that? And also, I got to work with this big orchestra. So this was a great, a lot of fun. This was recorded by an orchestra in the Czech Republic, the Brno Orchestra, with Dennis Russell Davies conducting. And for me, the orchestra was, the function of the orchestra really was nature. It was the thing that's just billowing up like this. And I grew up as I was a pretty serious violinist for a while until I realized I was not that good, so I quit. But, I spent a lot of time in music camp at Interlochen in Michigan, and so a lot of that was playing with big orchestras and being around beautiful lakes and trees, and it was these big swelling romantic things of strings in particular, and trees and nature. So for me, the orchestra was the ocean. It was the air. It was the big force that had these big swelling waves. So working with many of those intricate parts that make up a swell. That swell is made of cello lines and bass lines and viola lines that come through and other things that are percussive and other things that do this. And those are fascinating to try to construct and to make them sound somewhat like real things. I mean, nothing can compare to being on the ocean and seeing that kind of power. So, but that was definitely what I was trying for in terms of particularly the swelling things in the orchestra. The genesis of this piece was it was in had earlier versions of it that were for full orchestra, and they really didn't work very well. So I did a completely different version of it that became this one, based on strings.
On that note, Anohni, what was her role? How did you perceive her, or how did you?
Also, Anohni for me is a natural force and one of the most emotional singers. So I said, I really need the wind. I need some waves. Can you do the waves and the wind? Sure, you know. And also, when technology breaks, also in which was the cause of of her flight, of her crash, which was communication failure. At the time in the 30s, the communications were not standardized at all, so people were broadcasting on all kinds of different frequencies, and it was very confusing. So in the end, they could see her but not hear her, or she could see them but not hear them. So that was, I can see you, I can't see you, I can't hear you. So this conversation between lack of those senses. And then at the top of that we put a fanciful addition in Morse code of those lines. I can't hear you, I can't see you.
There's a question here.
I was wondering, your storytelling is so beautiful and poetic and musical and funny. So I'm curious about your twinning the words with the music. To what degree is that written? To what degree is it improvisatory? How do you manage that magic?
I was really afraid of the Peter and the Wolf syndrome. You know, you have an orchestra and do, you know, and somebody's talking over it, and I always just stop talking. I want to hear the orchestra. And so my approach to the language and the music was to sometimes drown the words, so you can hardly hear them or process them. We in the studio in Miraval we kind of defined 10 different voices, and we processed them very differently, so that there's some that were factual and some that were processed, some that were internal, sort of very intimate, others that were just, I'm here, I'm doing this, and we put them in different spaces so that it's not a reliable narrator at all. It's somebody who's kind of coming and going in and out of doors. And sometimes under the water, and so it's not at all consistent in that way. So I wanted to represent different aspects of her own, I guess, approach to flying, because she was also extremely technical person. She was very hands-on. She worked with her mechanics. She was not white gloves at all, unlike Lindbergh, who was quite a white gloves pilot. She was not. She was under the hood a lot of the time. She knew a lot of what she was doing. She was very concerned of running out of fuel, so she wrote a lot of letters to FDR about, I need this number of barrels in Papua New Guinea, and can you guarantee that to me, because you're the president. She had this, kind of large version of what she was doing, so the voices changed here and there. I also vocoded some of them so that they would be related in terms of chords to what was going on. Yeah.
You want to do one more question?
Sure.
All right. Okay. Who's got the?
What's vocoding? I'm sorry. This what? You said vocoding? Yeah. Okay, a vocoder, actually, it was originally invented as a coding device for in World War II by Bell Labs, and it was to disguise voices, and it was I really love the things that are developed at Bell Labs. So it's really, and also some of their experiments too. There's one that just is always haunting me. There's a man and a woman have a conversation. They record it. They recorded at Bell Labs, and then they sealed the room and measured the how long the sound waves would be going back and forth in this room. It was 3 years. So on infinitesimal levels, but these things that. So I'm fascinated by how our voices affect our physical world too. And there's something called a visual microphone that I'm really, really excited about, which is it's a way of I've tried to describe.
It's just a potato chip bag.
Yeah. So, a while ago, MIT did some really nice experiments with the way sound hits an object and causes that object to vibrate. So, in doing that, they would measure the infinitesimally pixel-like shoot video of this, let's say, plant. That you sing to a plant and the plant is going like this. So those waves, everything's a wave, so that's, in the short form version, using the correct algorithms, you can translate these visual waves back into sound. So you can play Mary Had a Little Lamb to the plant, and then you can listen to how the plant heard that back into sound. So you go, Mary had a little lamb, and then you hear the recording of the plant's version of that. Everything is listening, and we are. I mean, right now, our sound system is bombarding your hair. Let's say, it's moving tiny bits of thing, and if we had hair recorders, we could reconstruct what we've been saying for the last half an hour. It's a difficult proposition because which part of the conversation is your hair recording, and how do you want to edit that? There's a lot of editors here. How would you do that? Really, how practical is it? I'm just saying that when I was talking to my pillow, I never had a teddy bear. Oh, sad. I never had a teddy bear. I was talking to my pillow, and I was convinced my pillow is listening. Listening to me. And in fact, when I read this MIT study, I realized it was. It was listening.
Well, it's an animist kind of way of thinking.
It's
right?
a very childlike thing, but it's actually true. It's actually true. It's accurate. It's accurate.
Great. One more quick question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carrying a letter that she could not read was so incredible, and I wondered right then and there, did you have any relationship with the Mideast and things that were going on while you were creating this? Or
Relationship with what?
with the Mideast, anything going on? Have you gone to the Mideast? Did you feel a connection to? Just curious about that.
Yeah, I also liked the idea of carrying something that you couldn't read. That was extra insurance for her. I didn't. For me, this was a break from thinking about the Mideast in a way. She didn't actually fly that far north. She did fly over. She took a rather southern route, and then went swinging down to India, and then she didn't go up around what's going on. But the thing that did connect for me with that is that there she is in 30s and interested in speed and there she goes flying out of that decade into the 40s and into the 50s and into the future of American aeronautics and weaponry and people who are going, wow, that's really fast. She was kind of the queen of fast. So, this is our legacy. We do like speed. Americans like speed. It's a fascination. And so one of the reasons I put those giant motors in near the Ginsberg quote of America, Why Are Your Libraries Full of Tears, was that she did fly into the war machine. She was flying a very deadly weapon, something that became a deadly weapon, and she was quite aware of that in terms of speed and in terms of what the future might hold. So that's the reason for those huge engines and why her voice is drowned out. American, can you hear me? This is pilot Amelia Earhart, and you can't hear her. So that was the reason for the largest sound. The biggest sound in the record was those engines revving up, going into the 21st century, where we are #1 weapons producer of the world.
I just want to say thank you.
Leaving on that happy note.
I want to do just a specific thank you because, I've been dreaming about listening to something super beautiful in an immersive way in this room, and we got to do it today. And it's such a joy to have you here. Thank you for coming up and bringing Amelia.
Come back later for our events. Lucy Walker will be showing her film here. Martha will be playing. There's going to be a lot more happening today.
Right.